Hello and welcome to another edition of the Time Flies podcast. I am your host, Dariel. And for the listeners and viewers, you're going to hear a familiar voice and you're going to see a familiar face. It's like this guy has never left. I got my guy, Micah, in the building with me. Micah, how have you been, my guy?
I have been doing well. I have been cranking away on the grind here, and I'm happy to be back on this podcast. Always will make time in my day to talk some basketball.
My guy, Micah. I always appreciate you for answering my text, my DMs on Twitter, on Instagram, wherever you get my DMs. And I appreciate you hopping on this episode. So this episode is kind of like an emergency podcast episode, if you will, because of course the talk of the NBA is once again Mr. Kyrie Irving demanding a trade from Brooklyn, which was, I believe, was it Friday or Thursday that it went down?
It was Thursday that it went down, and then he didn't play in their game last night after he had demanded the trade request. And a lot of news has come out since then regarding how the rest of the team responded and ownership. And even Kevin Durant said that he was taking a nap when the trade request was happening. And then as soon as he woke up, he saw all of the tweets and texts on his phone, and his phone was blowing up, and he just couldn't even believe it. It was surprising and shocking to him.
Oh my God. Okay, so we could go a lot of different ways with this. But what I kind of want, the reason why I kind of wanted to have this episode was because, like, what is up with this guy, man? Like the audacity of this guy. Like I just don't understand. Like, and the last few episodes that we've had, I've made it clear about my opinion on Kyrie that he's not a superstar and that he's not a good overall NBA basketball player. He's only good in one aspect of the game, which is offensive. If you're literally just taking offense and pretend like defense doesn't exist in the NBA, he could be probably like top five offensive players to ever exist with his handles, finishing with the left hand, fadeaways, footwork, a la Kobe Bryant. But obviously, basketball is not like that. You have to incorporate making your teammates better. You have to incorporate defense. You have to incorporate leadership. Literally, out of those three, that's 0 for 3. Leadership, defense, and like being a mentor, like it's completely three strikes and you're out. This guy does not know how to be a leader, and he cannot be the face of your franchise. If he's the face of your franchise, look at what he has done with Boston, with right now with Brooklyn, and what people don't really talk about is when first few seasons before LeBron went back to Cleveland, when he was leading the Cleveland Cavaliers and they were like winning 20 games each season. I'm just like, honestly, man, when I heard that trade, when I heard that Woj and Shams, when I saw the Twitter bomb, the report, I was like, yo, this guy just doesn't give a fuck, man. Like he just doesn't care. Like he's making it known that he's going for his. And I understand as far as like the negotiation tactic, like he's looking for a certain amount of money and a contract. He's looking for a long term, and that's why this whole hoopla has been happening because Brooklyn is not offering that as they shouldn't because he hasn't been reliable. So he threw a hissy fit and he's like, you know what? If you guys are not going to give me that contract, then I want to trade. And there are other teams out there that are willing to pay. And we'll talk about those teams in a little bit. But like, yo, where's the loyalty to KD? Like, not even to Brooklyn, yo. Like, where's the loyalty to KD, bro?
Yeah, the answer is there is none. Kevin Durant himself had maybe foreseen something like this happening in the offseason when he originally requested a trade. And basically, what he did was just get the ball rolling and throw it into managerial sense in the ball in their court when they decided to move on from Sean Marks and Steve Nash. And then they just had to get a brand new fire sale and start over. And I think of the Brooklyn Nets as like a construction site where you see like on the front sign everywhere where it's like days since the last horrible accident. And we were at like 45, maybe 50 days or so. And then after a really good stretch of basketball in which they completely turned their season around, Kevin Durant looked like he was on his way to making first team All NBA over either Tatum or Giannis for one of the forward spots, maybe even MVP, who knows. Then he gets injured. Then the team is a okay team, about a 500 team since he went down. Then Kyrie thinks to himself, the Brooklyn Nets are not going to give me the 4-year max contract extension that I want, the 200 million ish ballpark contract that I
Right.
want. They're going to give me the 2 years, 100 mil, and I'm just going to be out on the street after that. So he realized that he had to make a move, even if it's not something that's really earned by him. He's played a total of 123 games in the last 3 seasons.
Jesus.
And look, if you're going to be a part-time player, even if you happen to have the skill set of him, and you mentioned offensively, I would even go a little bit thinner than that. It's strictly scoring, and scoring
Hmm.
is not all offense as well.
Nah, you're
So,
right. You're right about that.
look, Kyrie Irving, nobody's going to deny the fact that he can put the ball in the deck, get to the rim, and he's a great pull-up shooter, etc. But he is a nuisance to an organization, and the Brooklyn Nets are probably realizing at this point we are closer to being in purgatory than we are to winning a championship. And this team was originally constructed to win a championship. So when that's the goal, but there's really no foreseeable and realistic plan to get to that end goal, then you do have to start making significant changes. And one of those is Kyrie Irving is kind of a cancer, and we don't want to give him that max contract even if he wants to. So there's nothing that we really need to do right now in order to honor his trade request. If he's just going to choose to sit out until they decide to make a move, I don't think either one of those sides would really care much enough to budge over the next several days.
Yo, but Michael, like,
Or, I
but
mean, do you object to that? Because the only team that I could see giving in would be the Lakers, and I know
yeah,
that you're going to have something to say about them. They're the only team that I can see really wanting to take on his contract situation as well as his
right,
personality because
right.
they have LeBron, and LeBron is used to playing alongside Kyrie and channeling his energy into his on-court presence, which has always been a really productive player and one of the 20 to 25 best players in the league at any given time. Plus, you throw an AD and you think to yourself, look, that team would be constructed to win a championship as well. And it would be an all or nothing because at that point, they would be putting themselves into the cap hell for the next 10 years,
As
completely handcuffed, and they would need a championship in order to validate that.
the Lakers, that, but the whole Kyrie, like, I get why you want Kyrie, but that kind of feel like that's fool's gold. Like, this is just too much of a headache, man. Like, Kyrie is way too much of a headache. Like, first of all, if he gets traded to the Lakers have to worry about the rest of the season to see if he's gonna say something to just cause a ruckus. That's one. And then two, you don't know if you're gonna go deep into the playoffs because the amount of assets that you're gonna give up. That's two. Then three, after the season, you don't know if he's gonna sign long term, so you're gonna deal with that headache. That's three things that came up with the top of my head with Kyrie Irving. Now, as far as the actual assets and the actual trade for the Lakers, we'll talk about that in a little bit. But I kind of wanted to harp back on the whole Nets. Like, the reason why I'm also flabbergasted about this is because before KD went down, they were playing great basketball. Why the fuck is Kyrie fucking this up, man? And last season, of obviously the Nets and KD, they really got their asses whooped by Boston, and they got swept. And me personally, Kyrie fucked up the season because the whole COVID situation and he didn't want to get vaccinated. I'm not mad about that part. But what I'm mad about is the fact that he sat out. That really messed up the chemistry of the team. Like, when Kyrie was officially able to play, he never really played back in Brooklyn. He just played the away games, and it was like 2 games he was able to play, and then he had like 4 days off, and then he played 2 games, which is where he dropped a 60 point burger on Orlando. Like, that's not fluid. You can't build chemistry off of that. And then hence first round they get swept by Boston. So to me personally, last season was really on Kyrie's head. And then now this season, like, yo, they had such a fucking chance, bro, to make. I really feel if they matched up with Boston this season, it would have been a legitimate six game series. I don't know about seven, but it would have been 6 games. And as far as Boston or Brooklyn, I wouldn't give you a pick, but I can tell you that it would be a lot more tougher because there's just more cohesion, there's more fluidity, there's more chemistry, man. And Kyrie, after the whole anti-Semitic bullshit, like, he made it a point to not be a fucking disturbance. He made it a point. You can tell.
Right.
And then after what 3 weeks of not being a disturbance, he just decides to hit the bomb button and is like, yo, let me fuck everything up. Like, come on, man. And when I asked you the question as far as loyalty to KD, like, yeah, you are right. There really isn't any loyalty to anybody or anyone in the NBA anymore. And KD, like, this past summer, he requested a demand. So, like, can you really be mad at Kyrie? Not really. But when you look at it from this aspect, KD left the Warriors to join Brooklyn with Kyrie. Like
Right.
Kyrie's the one that told him to one, not go to the Knicks, two, come to Brooklyn with me. And KD, obviously, he had the whole thing with Draymond, so that didn't help. But KD was like, "Yo, my man is asking me to go. He's an insane talent of a basketball player. We can make some noise. Let's do it." So he left that situation for Kyrie, and look at what Kyrie is doing. Like ever since KD got to Brooklyn, it's been a fucking mess. Don't even get me started with the whole James Harden shit when James Harden was there.
Yeah.
Like, yo, like there's so many stories with this guy, and the common denominator is Kyrie Irving. Like, yo, if I was a GM, like I wouldn't even. I'd be like, okay, he's asking for a trade. So what? Like, he's not worth the headache. And okay, so now turning towards the teams that are looking to trade for him, like you were just talking about the Lakers. The Lakers are not in a yeah, they're in a bad situation. They kind of need to make this happen because if they don't, this season is literally going to be like they might not make it to the play-in. I believe they're in 12th place right now. So it's like,
Yeah, they are. They are in 13th in the West. And you think to yourself, the only teams that are currently with worse records in the West right now are Houston and San Antonio, who would like to have Victor Wembanyama on their roster next season much more than being in the play-in. And the Lakers are the team that's the next up in the standings from there. And that's just an embarrassment given the talent that they have. Outside of LeBron and AD, they basically have a poverty roster. And
hmm,
now you're getting these resorts, you're getting these reports over the last week or so about Russell Westbrook being unhappy there after he fit in pretty nicely as a solid sixth man and maybe have even won sixth man of the year award later in the year. Who knows?
I'm
Yeah,
proud of
credit
him.
to him for changing his play style and becoming more welcoming to coming off the bench. But
Facts.
now he is kind of angry at the situation there. He's getting benched in fourth quarters, and their team is horrendous defensively. I think if you are horrendous defensively, the one thing you can do to try to fix that would just be to outscore teams 125 to 124 every game, and then you just go all in with Kyrie.
And also another thing is the whole LeBron like going for the Kareem Abdul-Jabbar record. Like this is just a shame. It's just a shame how this season might end up looking for LeBron. But okay, so now to go into the actual trades. So I was doing some research before this episode, and I've got some teams that are looking to trade for Kyrie, and I actually have the proposed trades, if you will. So check this out. So if the Lakers were to trade for Kyrie, the Nets would be getting Russell Westbrook and the illustrious two first round picks of the Lakers that they've been holding on for dear life for 2027 and 2029.
Yeah, because who doesn't want a couple high school players right now on their team?
Um, so like honest, if I was the Lakers, man, like again, and if I was Jeannie Buss, it's too much of a headache with Kyrie, but the position that you're in, you're kind of like, fuck, I kind of have to do this. Another team that is in the Kyrie sweepstakes, we're looking at the Miami Heat. So I don't know if you know about the proposed trade, but let me throw this at you. So the Miami Heat would receive Kyrie Irving, and the Brooklyn Nets would get an aging Kyle Lowry, a Duncan Robinson, a 2023 first round pick, oh, which is this draft, duh,
Yeah.
and a 2027 first round pick.
If I am Brooklyn, I think that I like the Lakers
Hmm.
deal a little bit more. And
Of
here's why.
course.
Duncan Robinson, look, he is on the short list of guys with one of the worst contracts in the NBA right now. The guy can't make a shot.
He's not playing
His
either.
entire game is being a swingman off the bench who can just come in and pump up threes and score 10 points in an instant like Kyle Korver, except
Yeah,
he's not Kyle Korver.
yeah, and I
And,
believe he's not even in the rotation right now.
no, he's not.
Mm.
So the idea is that he would be able to rekindle himself and get back to that rookie and sophomore year when the Heat were in the bubble making it to the finals. And he looked like he was a legitimate, like, nice seventh man, the second guy off the bench for a good team. But that's not the guy that we're talking about at this point. And look, I think Russell Westbrook is probably a better player than Kyle Lowry at this point, although it's pretty close between those two.
That's a
One
shame.
of
Come
them,
on, don't
one of
don't do
them looks
don't do
better.
that to Russ, yo. Russ is a way better player than Kyle Lowry right now. Don't do that to Russ. Come on, Micah.
One of those guys, and to his credit, is Russ. One of those guys looks like he has a few good years left in the tank, at least being a functional guy that can sell tickets and is going to put up above average numbers to decent numbers. And then the other thing you have to remember is the 27 and 29 first round picks with the Lakers. If LeBron leaves after his deal is up in 2 years, their team is going to go in the toilet, which means that those first round picks are going to skyrocket in terms of value. And that's why I think the Lakers right now are trying to trade away those picks because they know that they need to send those to a team where they are not going to potentially be staring at a Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown kind of those two picks turned into those level of players, and it wound up biting them in the ass the way that the Nets once made a mistake. Does that make
Right.
sense?
No, no, it makes sense. Definitely makes sense. As far as the Miami Heat proposed trade, that is a god awful trade. Lakers, I mean, Brooklyn, don't do that. Proposed trade number three with team number three. We're looking at the Dallas Mavericks. I don't know if you heard
Ah,
of.
I love this idea.
Yeah, I don't know if you heard this exact trade, but let me throw it at you. Let me get your reaction. The Dallas Mavericks will receive Kyrie Irving, and the Brooklyn Nets will receive Spencer Dinwiddie, Dwight Powell, the 2025 first round pick, the 2026 first round pick. Oh, first round swap. I'm sorry, first round swap, and
Okay.
the 2027 first round pick. Obviously, the Miami Heat trade, that's definitely at the bottom of the list right now. But between the Lakers trade and the Mavericks trade, which one are you kind of leaning towards?
Okay, personally, if I'm Brooklyn, I like the Dallas deal.
Yeah,
First off, because Spencer Dinwiddie has played in Brooklyn before, and I'll
right.
argue that that was the best basketball that he had played during those years with them.
Fair.
They would probably welcome him back with open arms. And look, I think if you do the deal with any team, you're likely going to have Kevin Durant wanting out indefinitely because Kyrie Irving was the reason why Durant was there in the first place, as you mentioned earlier. So if you are going to do that deal, you have to set yourself up better for the future. And even if you are going to be a team that's bad, I think that Brooklyn last time or this time last year said that if we are going to do a deal like this, we want to have a team that is going to be able to be in the playoffs every year and a hunt for 50 wins ish level team. But I don't think that they think that way anymore if they are going to pull the plug and do a deal like this before Thursday's deadline. So I like the Dallas deal. I also think if you're Dallas, you have to do that deal knowing that the clock is probably starting to tick on whether or not Luka would be asking out in a couple of years if their team is not able to bring in another star. And Kyrie Irving, for as much turmoil as you will bring on with him, Dallas has all the money in the world in order to give him the 4 year contract. If he can just prove for the rest of this season, he was that suitable number two guy alongside Luka, and then they would instantly have the best backcourt in the NBA.
Dude, like I get everything you're saying, but Spencer Dinwiddie and Dwight Powell, like I
I
get
think
it.
the picks, though, that's probably what I'm thinking about more so than Dinwiddie and Powell.
Man, picks schmicks. It's just like, yo, man, draft picks are like it's I don't know if anybody will admit this, but when you're working to draft, it's a gamble. Like, I don't care what anybody says. I don't care about the research that you do. It's a gamble. I don't care if there's been an All-American player who's been since birth, and then he was able to live up to the hype up until after his first year of college. It's still a gamble because injuries happen, because outside forces of basketball happen. That's why I'm like, I get the draft picks and why they're intriguing. But for me personally, I was never really a huge fan. I'm always looking at what player am I getting back for this player. And as far as Spencer Dinwiddie and Dwight Powell for Kyrie Irving, like, bruh, like I don't know, man. But and yeah, between Lakers, Miami, and the Mavericks so far, honestly, the Lakers and Mavericks are they're tied for me as far as the best package that they can send out to Brooklyn. The last trade that I want to, well, not the last one, but one of the last ones that I want to throw out to you is the Minnesota Timberwolves. This trade proposal is kind of like is not really a lot. So the Minnesota would get Kyrie Irving, and the Brooklyn Nets would receive D'Angelo Russell. Welcome home to D'Angelo Russell, and also draft compensation. So if I was Brooklyn, I would not do that. I would. I just wouldn't do that at all. D'Angelo Russell is very, very inconsistent, and unfortunately, I had a lot more high hopes for him. But I don't know, man. He's been playing better for Minnesota as of late, so I'll give him that. But I don't know, man. I don't know if he could be the centerpiece of a trade for Kyrie Irving. Like that's just me.
The other team that I've heard with their name
Right,
floated around is the Phoenix Suns
right.
around Kyrie Irving, and that deal would include Chris Paul, Jay Crowder, and a first and a second pick swap. And basically, that deal would be a question of, do you still believe that Chris Paul has one good year left in him? And would he be able to be bringing out the best version of Kevin Durant, which most likely he would, because Durant, I don't think the best version of Durant's that I've seen have been playing alongside a guard that can actually feed him, a la Steph Curry and a la James Harden. But then you also have to realize the rest of that roster needs more size. So I guess Jay Crowder fits that bill as well, because outside of Durant and Claxton, they normally just run lineups with three small guards, and they're a horrendous rebounding team, and they perpetually just let guys drive to the rim without any resistance. So
Brooklyn needs to
I
get
guess
Boogie,
from a
yo.
needs standpoint, that kind of makes sense. What do you feel about that potential trade?
I mean, I'm still every one of these trades. There's always like a little hiccup. The Phoenix trade would be amazing if this was like 2, 3 years ago, Chris Paul. But this season, he looks like a fucking old man, bro. He looks like an
Yeah, he
old
looks closer
man.
to retirement than he does to making an all NBA team.
Yeah, man. And I just wish this was like 2 or 3 years ago. And then the Brooklyn, this would be the best trade package so far. But it's just like it's another hiccup. And going back to your big man, I'm like a strong proponent of getting Boogie Cousins. Like there's a lot of teams after the trade deadline, they go towards the buyout market. And Boogie is in there. Like people aren't really talking about him and he can still play. I hear his name like every once in a while on a podcast or whatnot, but Brooklyn needs size, and Dwight Howard is in China. So if they want to get Dwight, maybe they could like buy him out. I don't know, but Boogie's out there, and I don't know why they haven't really addressed that. Like they should really be looking for any big just possible because Nick Claxton needs help. Like and again, I want to give him a shout out because like I kind of dogged him in our episode in the summer talking about the upcoming season, and he's actually been holding his own, but he needs help. And Boogie's out there, so Brooklyn Nets, you guys should be looking at him. The last team that I want to talk about, I don't know if you heard, but the Clippers yesterday during NBA Countdown, Big Woj was talking about he was talking about how the Clippers joined in the conversation, and that is interesting. If I think if Kyrie Irving can land on the Clippers, depending on what they give up, all I know is that it would be John Wall, Moses Brown, I think a draft pick, I think one or two other players. I think Terrence Mann is in that. Um, I don't know, man. If that happens, and if the Clippers are like, you know what, let's just rank Kyrie for the last 20 games of the season and the playoffs. Like, I don't know how you feel about that. And Kawhi's actually been playing. Congratulations, you've been actually playing. You're an NBA player or whatever. But what do you
Yep.
think about that?
Yeah, to your point, Kawhi has been an NBA player finally, not just an NBA experiment that sits on the sidelines and occasionally claps or smiles every once in a while. But yes, I think if this trade were to happen, I would look at the LA Clippers the same way that I probably did when Kawhi, KD, and Harden were playing alongside each other, because it's one of those guys that's just going to be missing at all times. So you're really looking at a big two instead of a big three.
Wait, Kawhi, KD, and when were
I
they?
said KD, Harden, and Kyrie,
Oh,
the
my
same
bad, my
way
bad.
that I would look at Kawhi, PG, and Kyrie, because one of those guys is just going to be missing at any time, no matter what. So you've basically mortgaged your entire future for, once again, as you mentioned earlier this season, an absolute boom or bust, title or bust season for the LA Clippers. And I think trying to add Kyrie Irving in the middle of the season is going to be more difficult than some of those other microwave off-ball scorers like a Devin Booker or a Bradley Beal or players like that, who also don't necessarily need the ball in their hands and can move off screens. But you're taking on the baggage of Kyrie, and
Yeah.
it's the baggage for him is like getting off of a flight, and just the baggage isn't there because the baggage is talking to the media, or the baggage is oversized and doesn't even make it off the plane, or maybe the baggage crashed the plane and we didn't even know it.
And
So
yeah, man. And again, everyone now, I mean, again, if the Clippers were to trade for Kyrie from the Clippers side, I get why you would talk yourself into it. It's Kyrie, it's PG, it's Kawhi. I get it, but again, on the Brooklyn side, what am I getting back? I'm getting a John Wall who's he's definitely over his prime, and like I just don't think we're ever gonna see the same John Wall anymore. We're getting a Moses Brown who's super young. He has promise, but not enough promise to be the centerpiece of a trade or even be a highlight of a trade. Terrence Mann is definitely a good player. That'll be a nice little pickup. I believe there's one more
Yeah,
player that
but
I can.
Terrence Mann is also an eighth man on a team.
Fair. I believe there's another player that I can't think of right now, and there's definitely a draft pick in there. So again, it's another hiccup. It's like, yeah, that trade is cool, but it's not something that I can like jump towards and be like, yes, give me that right now. So every single one of these trades, there's always like a little hiccup, and it's like, So Brooklyn, man, good luck, Sean Marks. I'm sorry, bro. I'm sorry you're dealing with Kyrie. The bright side is that he wants out, so you have an out with him. Get him the fuck out of there.
I want to move on to talking about OG Anunoby and maybe some Kyle Kuzma talk. So OG Anunoby, as we've heard from Toronto Raptors camp as well as his agent, they are going to demand 3 first-round picks in return for him, thinking that OG is on the same level player of Drew Holiday and then most recently DeJounte Murray in a similar level deal to that's going to completely change a franchise, whoever adds him. However, there are 2 teams that come to mind that are in the Western Conference who would greatly benefit from having OG Anunoby on their team, and that's New Orleans and Memphis.
Mm.
2 young teams that really have 2 stars each that they have paid, but also need to think about paying one other guy for the coming future, which is in the Pelicans case, they're going to have to think about paying Brandon Ingram again. And then they're also going to have to, in Memphis' case, figure out who is going to get the big contract. Is it going to be Jaren Jackson Jr. or Desmond Bane? But both of those teams have youngish players that they don't actually need to contend right now, as well as the 3 first-round draft picks to be able to make this deal work. So of those 2 teams, who do you think you would think of as a much more serious title contender should they add OG?
Memphis, because New Orleans, they just Zion's not reliable. Brandon Ingram is coming back from an injury. CJ's been carrying on his own, but he's having a bad season. And yeah, the New Orleans. By the time Zion comes back, you don't know if he's going to stay healthy for the remainder of the season. And then there's too much chemistry that they need to build. As far as Memphis, like as much arrogance as they have, they know what their team is. They know how to. They have the experience. They know how to move. And adding another player like OG is like OG knows his role. He's gonna maximize his role as much as he can to the best of his potential, to the best of his ability. And yeah, New Orleans Pelicans, they made the first round. They don't have enough experience, so it's not like you plug OG in there and it's like, okay, he fixes everything. You still have to learn from past the first round. Memphis at least has gotten to the second round, and they got Ja, who's been reliable health wise. Zion is just not reliable.
I fully agree. There really have been 4 fully reliable superstars this season in terms of health, and that has been Giannis, Jokic, Tatum, and Ja.
Anthony Davis. Oh,
So Anthony Davis, it's hard to know. Like he was a superstar for all of maybe 2 weeks, and then he comes back to earth because he tweaks his knee or ankle or something, and then he's out for a month. And you know what? He's another one of those construction site guys where it's just like
that was so
days since the
funny.
last accident, and
That was
everybody
so funny.
slaps it on their way out every time until something horribly happens.
Yeah,
Then it all goes awry
OG.
instantly and blows up in their face. But
Yeah, the trade deadline is Thursday, and that's like been a talk. OG he's been like the talk of like every team, everybody, Woj and Shams. They're saying like this team is interested, this team, this team, this team, and I'm like, all right, like hopefully we actually see something.
call me insane for this. The other thing that I did think about was like, what if Cleveland was super opportunistic and wanted Kyrie back so much they were like Kyrie for Darius Garland straight up? But then the other thing that I thought about was
Please stop. Please stop. If I'm
okay,
Cleveland, yeah, if,
so
if I'm Cleveland, I am building a bubble around the Quicken Loans Arena or whatever that arena is. I'm building a
yeah,
bubble around it. I don't want Kyrie breathing next to that building, bro.
yeah. Yeah, I totally agree. But then the other thing that I was thinking about is the one thing that Cleveland needs more than anything is a 3 and D guy to round out their starting five because they have the two smalls and the two bigs. And the one thing that they're missing is floor spacing and reliability in terms of defensive versatility from that role. I want Jay Crowder on the Cleveland Cavaliers if I'm them, and the guy is just sitting at home doing nothing. But then the other guy that I think of is Kyle Kuzma, who is having the best season of his career, and he's a player that I have really enjoyed watch blossom. And he's another guy that I just think about, man, imagine if the Lakers still had him.
Imagine if the Lakers still had that 2020 team. Contavious Caldwell-Pope.
KCP, Alex Caruso. I mean, they were just a defensive juggernaut.
Like LeBron, run it back, bro. Why do you? Oh God. Anyway, yeah, no, man. Kyle Kuzma, he's definitely intriguing. He could definitely be a nice addition to one of the teams that's contending. Me personally, I just think his fashion statement, like alone, is like you need to trade for him. Like he came into the, you saw what he was wearing into the tunnel yesterday, like this huge bubble Rick Owens jacket or whatever. That was
Yeah,
so
I don't
fire.
even know what to call that, but it was really intriguing. And as soon as I saw it, I was thinking to myself, is he trying to protect himself from the trade market? Like, I am in my own comfort bubble
That's
and nobody comes
hilarious.
in and nobody goes out.
I didn't even think about that. I was just thinking about the weather because the weather on the East Coast has been brutal lately, but that could be like he could be like foreshadowing something. Like, I'm protecting myself from all this trade rumor talk. Philly, 76ers, they're another intriguing team because I think, yeah, they're making a lot of noise right now. They're playing good. James Harden should have been an all-star, whatever. I don't like him. But yo, the one thing that I see is a glaring problem is the backup big. Montrezl Harrell, man. Like, dude, I don't know what the hell happened to him since he won that six man of the year, but like he just has not been the same. And like if they could pick up a solid big man to go in behind Embiid, like I would be looking at them a little different. Boogie Cousins is out there. Boogie Cousins behind Embiid. Hello.
They play kind of the same game, and Boogie Cousins essentially was Embiid when he was in his prime, too.
Good call. Matisse Thybulle is another one from the 76ers. He's offensively, he's pretty much a nightmare, but he's known as this like really good defender. So that's somebody that they could be shopping.
Oh, I guess the one other thing would be Bones Highland, because if we're just
Oh,
going to
right,
stay on
right.
the topic of contenders, do you send Highland to a team, or is Highland one of those guys like Tyler Hero that thinks to himself, I should be a starter somewhere and I can totally be that guy if I were to get a $30 million contract somewhere? Or is he somebody that stays with the Denver Nuggets because they think to themselves, we have our starting five that we're super confident with, and you throw in Bruce Brown essentially as our sixth starter, but then Bones Highland is this horrid defensive player who's going to come off the bench and be a microwave 10 to 15 points on a really good team. Or if you can send him away and you can get some more defensive pieces and potentially a good backup big. Like I like Zeke Naji with the Denver Nuggets. He's done a fantastic job, but I don't think anybody realizes or thinks that he's going to hold up in a playoff series. And is Bones Highland a guy that could average 20 points on decent efficiency somewhere else as a starter? And what could you get back for him in return?
Yeah,
I'm
man.
I'm curious to see what Denver does because I think Denver is the favorite in the Western Conference right now for sure, but they're definitely not the title favorite overall.
Yeah, man. Good call with Bones Highland because that's been the talk lately about how the reason why he's in the trade rumors is because I've heard through other podcasts and watching NBA shows or whatever is that he's having a problem with the coaches. And the problem is that Jokic is obviously the superstar player on the team and he's having like triple double nights. And then all of a sudden, Bones Highland is like, everybody clear out. I'm going to cross over this guy. It's going to be about me.
Yeah.
Like, and when you watch the games, like it's pretty evident that he wants the attention, and that obviously can mess up the flow of the team. I don't know if you heard about the rumored trade, but the rumored trade would be Bones Highland going to the Knicks for Emmanuel quickly.
They're swapping the same player. That's kind of funny because I think of those two as basically the same player in different situations. Where if Quickly were to come in with the Nuggets, would he be more accepting of a similar role? And to be honest, I
I
just
don't
can't
know.
fathom if I were an NBA player not enjoying playing alongside Jokic. I mean, the guy makes it so easy. We've
Yeah,
seen Bruce Brown spruce or Spruce Brown, I guess you can call him, come
Nice.
into his own as a nice blossoming flower because all you got to do outside of Jokic is hit the open three in the corner and backdoor cut to the rim. And it makes basketball look so easy, like it's a high school game, even though you're playing in the NBA.
Yeah, but I understand Bones. He's young. He wants to make a name for himself. He doesn't know how to do that, you know? Like I get it. Yeah, just like you said though, you're trading for a player that's kind of like him, so you don't know if Quickly would respond in the same exact way as Bones is right now. So if you're asking me, damn, I think I would just stick with Bones. What about you?
I would too. I would
Yeah.
tell Bones, I'd probably sit him down and maybe a players meeting that Jokic and Jamal Murray and some of the other guys can lead and basically tell him, look, we need you to be yourself when you come off the bench, but do understand that in some playoff situations, you might fall out of the rotation just because of the defensive liability that you present, which is one of the reasons why we can't necessarily have you on the court at the same time as Jokic. So we may have to go to strictly a 7-man rotation, which would be, I mean, potentially the occasional Vlatko Chanchar and Christian Brown minutes as well, but we need some more size. So it would be obviously the same starting five: Jamal Murray, KCP, Porter, Gordon, and Jokic. And then off the bench, it's Bruce Brown and Zeke Naji. But then you occasionally get to Vlatko Chanchar and Christian Brown. But there are times when we just need Bones to come off the bench and deliver a punch where we just need some scoring pickup, even though we are the number one offense in the history of the NBA on a per
Yeah.
possession basis. So I understand the quandary from Bones' perspective, but he also does need to understand if I'm going to average 20 points a game on an NBA team, it's not going to be the Denver Nuggets, especially not right now, given the intact pieces that they have and how they're blowing out teams at historic clips recently, too.
Yeah, I mean, again, Bones is young, so it's kind of hard to reel him in. But again, going back to last season when they lost to the Warriors in the first round in 5 games, like it was a competitive 5 games, and Bones had moments. He had a lot of moments where he
Yeah.
caught fire and he was cooking Clay or anybody guarding him, and he was like the offensive leader on the team, aside Jokic, obviously. But Bones had moments, yo. And again, if Michael Malone, if he could hone his aggressiveness and his whole like wanting to be the guy on the court, if he could hone that in and be like, yo, we need you to do that, but we need you to do it in this moment or in that moment, it'll be really good. And the Denver Nuggets, they have a legitimate chance this year, man.
Oh,
I
yeah.
have so in the episodes that we did in the summer talking about the upcoming season, I picked Denver coming out of the West. But I'm gonna have to change my pick just out of respect for the Warriors because the Warriors they deserve the respect of picking them because a healthy Dre, Clay, and Steph, nobody's ever beaten them. Healthy Dre, Clay, and Steph, nobody's ever beaten them. They're
That's why
defending.
LeBron is the GOAT, bruh, because he did that.
See, okay, see, I could throw this at you. I could throw this at you. Steph wasn't healthy in that playoffs.
Steph wasn't healthy earlier in the playoffs, and then I guess you can make the argument that Draymond missed Game 6 due to or Game 5 due to suspension, but the Cavs also won that game by 17. If you're telling me that Draymond makes the team 17 points better, I'd hear the argument. But that season they were only about 6 or 7 points better when he was on the court per 100. So
I get what
I'm
you're
not
saying.
really going to entertain that. But
I get what you're saying, but yeah, that's why I'm switching my pick from Denver to Warriors. I'm not comfortable with the Warriors coming out. And again, the only reason why I'm doing it is because I'm showing respect to the three core. But outside of Warriors, I got Denver hands down. I got them, and if they lose, I would actually be surprised. But you never know. We'll see what happens. So okay, so this we were just talking about LeBron and coming back from 3-1, which kind of goes right into the next topic that I wanted to talk about. What I wanted to talk about real quick before you head out, I just want to show Kareem some flowers, bro, because Kareem, whenever people talk about the best players of all time, Kareem gets overlooked every
yeah,
time. And it's because he's a big man. But bro, we're talking about 6 NBA titles. We're talking about
six
five.
MVPs here. The case for Kareem, real quick.
Yeah,
Greatest high school player ever, greatest college player ever, and most accomplished NBA player ever. So basically, from the age of about 14 to 38, he had the best 24-year stretch of basketball anybody's ever had. And he was the all-time scoring leader up until this coming week at some point, and has the most unguardable move ever. Was an 11-time defensive player or 11-time all defensive player as well. So he's the all-time leader in scoring at this point, all-time leader in MVPs. He won 6 championships. He is the oldest finals MVP ever. He's somebody who averaged 27 points a game for a grand total of 12 seasons. And he's also somebody who, I may have this wrong, but he's also somebody who averaged 30 and 10 for his entire prime, which was about 8 years. And he changed the game. He literally made dunking illegal in college for an entire season because he did it so effortlessly. This is a guy who won 3 national titles in college and only had 1 loss the entirety of his years there at UCLA.
And the only reason why he didn't
walking dynasty. And look, I guess you can make the argument that he always, in his NBA career, for the most part, played with an all-time great guard, whether it was Magic or Oscar. But both of those guys really brought the ball up the floor with one intention, which is to get the ball to Kareem in a favorable situation, and he will finish it no matter what.
Exactly. And going back to the college, the UCLA days, the only reason why he didn't win 4 in a row is because back in those days, freshmen had to redshirt. So like he would have won 4 in a row. And like just like you said, all the finals MVPs, all the championships, the only reason why he gets overlooked is because he's a big man. Like that's not fair, man. Kareem, for me personally, MJ's the GOAT, no question. That's not even a conversation for me. After MJ, there's a legit argument for Kareem to be the second best player of all time. I don't care what anybody says. LeBron is in that conversation. To me, it's Kareem and LeBron. But the fact that people are just throwing LeBron as the best player of all time or the second best player of all time, like, no, we need to stop showing disrespect to Kareem, throw him in the conversation, make sure that his name is talked about a lot more and show him his flowers because, like you said, he's literally a walking dynasty. And just because he's a big man with a sky hook and he's not able to put the ball between his legs and do these crazy acrobatic dunks, like that should be no reason why people should overlook him. So Kareem, we want to give you your flowers. Your record's about to be broken. I'm sorry, but for having the record for, I believe it's about close to 40 years is an amazing achievement. And you are one of the pillars of the NBA, of NBA history, of basketball, period. We appreciate you. And LeBron, he's going to make a name for himself as far as like being the all-time leader scorer in NBA, which is interesting because to me, he's not a scorer. He's actually just, he's just an overall basketball player. And his strongest suit to me is actually his playmaking. And making
it's the drive and kick for LeBron. But back to your point with Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, consistency and production. Both of those two things, I can make the argument that he did better than anybody else ever. And just because he's a big doesn't mean you have to overlook some of the other skill sets that he has. He was a fantastic defender, and offensively, you can make the case that he was the best scorer of all time because he had the most unguardable move, and he was 30, 10, and 4, I believe, for about 8 years in which he shot 57% from the floor and he shot 65% of the skyhook.
Sheesh.
Absolutely unguardable. Yep.
Yeah, man. All right. So Kareem, we gave you flowers. We talked about Kyrie. We talked about the trade deadline. So Micah, I'm gonna let you go. But of course, before you head out, I want to give the light to my guests. So tell the people where they could reach you at, if it's social media or if it's anything else that you got going on, my guy.
Yep. So my NBA Instagram is the NBA Interact at NBA Interact. You can find me there. I'm also a writer for CLNS Media, who covers the Boston Celtics. And I am also somebody who jumps around from podcast to podcast. I am a sports broadcaster here at Syracuse University, and you can hear me on WAER.
Go check out my guy, Micah, man. As far as time flies, I'm going to put the links down below for everything, the social media, for the podcast, where you can catch it everywhere. So everybody will check you on the next episode of the Time Flies podcast. And thank you for tuning in. Peace.